Welcome into the Toronto Sports Rush right here on the Bet Rivers Network. Remember to subscribe, to like. A lot of great content for you as we have today. EJ Hradek alongside Brian Boucher, longtime NHL goaltender, now one of the top analysts in all of hockey, works for TNT. Of course, you remember him for being a goaltender in the NHL for many years, holds the record, 6 straight shutouts. I don't even think anybody's come close to that in a long time. And I don't know if anybody's going to break that record. And I like to always point out a silver medalist at the 1997 World Junior Championships when he was outstanding in that tournament at a time when Team USA wasn't winning any medals at the World Juniors. Brian Boucher, I think it was a 1.51 goals against in that tournament. So thanks for taking the time today. Appreciate it. Trade deadline coming up. So let's get right to it. The Leafs make a move. They trade Nic Roy to the Colorado Avalanche. They get a first and a fifth back. Your thoughts on that deal?
I think it's a good return, right? I mean, I think, the Leafs, last year they've taken a lot of heat for, the move to give up a first rounder for Scott Laughton. So they do get a first rounder back now, albeit it's Colorado's, which will be a lot later in the first round, but it is a first round pick nonetheless. And a good pickup for Colorado and Nic Roy, who has another year in his deal. I think he's a third line center all day long. It's a deep team there in Colorado, so I think a good pickup for them. But for the Leafs, obviously a pivot where they have to start stockpiling some draft picks. And anytime you can get a first rounder, I think you it's probably prudent to do that. And so yeah, is it the start of more to come for the Leafs? We shall see. But anytime you get a first rounder, I think it's the right move considering where the Leafs are at right now.
Yeah. Why don't you think it worked out for Nic Roy in Toronto? Because I really love him as a player. I agree with you. I mean, he's one of these guys. He already won a Stanley Cup. He's a big, long, rangy centerman that can play in a lot of different situations in the game. Why didn't it work out for him better with Toronto?
I think maybe it's just more of a victim of circumstance, truthfully, EJ. I mean, not here very long. I mean, not even one
Yeah.
full season. So, it's hard to really judge, what he can be for your team. And I think things have gone so poorly for the Leafs this year where it's just, they can't seem to settle the waters
Yeah.
with everything that's gone on. So, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily that Nic Roy didn't work out. I mean, maybe if you got him last year in a situation where the team was really, you know, really making a push for that, for the top of the Atlantic Division, it might have been a different story. I don't know why it quite didn't work out. I think it's more of a victim of the circumstances and where the team was at, and maybe things beyond his control. And for the Leafs, I think it's prudent to make a move where you can recoup some future assets in a situation like this. This team is going nowhere this year, and they've got to find a way to get some picks and restock the cupboards as quickly as possible.
All right, let me ask you about Scott Laughton. You brought him up already. They made the deal with Philly last year. They traded away they traded away a first round pick to get Scott Laughton. It looks like he's another guy that could be on the move. Give me your thoughts about what he brings to the table. You know him from Philly. You've seen him play for a while in Philly. He's moved on to Toronto now. From all accounts, he's been a really good team guy for the Leafs. What do you think of Laughton? What could he bring to somebody at this stage? And could they get that first round pick back for him? I mean, so we saw Nick Dowd move to Vegas today, and they were willing to trade a first round pick. We see Watt traded first round pick. Could Laughton bring one back?
I don't think so. I think that would be it'd be a miracle if they could. And I will preface this by saying I love Scott Laughton. He
Yeah.
was a teammate of mine when he first came in. He's a wonderful person, a great teammate, and the Flyers miss him inside the locker room. I will say that, even up to this, even up to this point. And I think those same sentiments can be echoed in Toronto. The guys love him inside the locker room, but he's a fourth line center at this point, and maybe he
Yeah.
can play wing as high as your third line if need be. But I think when they traded for him, I think the hope was that he'd be your third line center in Toronto last year, and I don't think that worked out the way it should. So. I don't think they can get a first rounder for him. If they could get a second, that would be. And you never know. I mean, sometimes these
Yeah.
prices go up as a deadline nears, and
Yeah.
and teams get desperate and they realize, hey, we've only got a few minutes here, so you never know. But I would be shocked if they got a first rounder. I do think if he went to the right place, the right situation, he could help a team. And unfortunately, it's not going to be for the Leafs because of the way the situation worked out. But if he goes to a contender where they need that depth, he can help out. He's a good penalty killer. He's good in faceoffs. So there's like intangibles there that I think he can be a nice piece to a bigger puzzle.
Let me ask you about another guy that looks like he's going to be on the move, Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I mean, he was a guy that played down in a place where you played in Arizona for many years, went to Vancouver, won a cup with Florida, has gone to Toronto. Now, I thought he was really good for the Leafs last year. And in fact, I think he's been good this year. He's been one of the bright spots for that team, but he's into his mid 30s now. He's a valuable piece. You just saw him at the Olympics for Team Sweden. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, what's your take on him right now and how valuable could he be to another team?
Yeah, I don't know that he could, does he get you a first rounder? I don't, my initial thought is no. Um, Maybe second round. I mean, but he has played well, and I think he
Yeah.
has the experience of playing in the playoffs. Obviously, he won a Stanley Cup there in Florida, and at a time when maybe people were souring on him a couple years ago, he seems to kind of rejuvenated his
Yeah.
career a little bit as a depth guy. So he's got some offense to him as well, and I think teams would be. Would be silly if they didn't check in on that and really try to make a move for him here. You can never have enough defensemen come
Yeah.
playoff time, and yeah, you want some of those nail gun type of guys for sure in the playoffs. You need those guys, but then there's also guys that you need that can move it, that can skate out of trouble, that can put it on someone's tape, that can try and generate some offense. Because at the end of the day, you got to have those guys in order to make plays. And I think Ekman Larson is one of those guys. Be interesting to see what they could get for him. I mean, could it fetch as high as a first? I mean, like I said, you never know when the timing is dwindling. You never know; it
Yeah.
could happen. But I feel like more of a second rounder could be. I think is where he probably would fill that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, but it is crazy. I think teams, you're right. Teams get caught up in a crunch or this year where it's kind of wide open. Colorado had that great start, but, they've been good since January 1st on, but they haven't been unbelievable. Like I'm sure teams look at it and say, hey, they're not a team that is destined to win this year. There's other teams maybe they feel like adding a player like that could help them. So we'll see. I mean, I'm still surprised that Nick Dowd was able to fetch a first rounder from Vegas. So these you just never know how it's going to play. I want to ask you about Bobby McMann. That's the interesting one for me.
Hmm.
He's 29, going to be 30. He's grown up in the Leafs organization. I think he's a guy that I think still has some upside. Like the Leafs can trade as many guys as they want. They can do whatever they want, Boucher. But the bottom line is, I mean, they have to field a team next year. And Bobby
Yeah.
McMann seems like he still could be a helpful player. I mean,
Uh,
I guess you just size it up. And if you can get somebody wants to blow your way, you take a deal. And if you don't, you keep them.
Exactly. You just nailed it right there. I would not look to trade him. He's
Yeah.
on the cusp of what his second straight 20-goal season. He's got
Yeah.
speed. He's got some jam to him. He can play with good players. You're right. I don't. This is a guy who's finally. It's taken a little bit of time for him to get going, but here he is. And it's not like there's going to be a slew of free agents come this summer. It's going to have to
That's
be
right.
through trade or development of players that are in your system. And I don't think the Leafs have that in the system unless I'm missing something. So
Yeah.
you're right. If they knock your socks off and they get desperate and they throw whatever they want, then maybe it's
Yeah.
too good to pass up. But McMahon's a guy that I would look to keep in the fold just because he's younger and he seems to be hitting his stride.
Let me ask you about goaltending. Generally speaking, it seems like Boucher, I'd love to get your thought on this. Like, it seems like when goalies move at the deadline, a lot of times it doesn't move the needle that much, even if a team really needs a goalie. I go back to when Ryan Miller went from Buffalo to St. Louis, many years ago now, and everybody thought, oh, this is a great deal. And it didn't really work for Ryan Miller in St. Louis. Why do you think that is that goalies moving at the deadline, when they do, don't make a big impact?
I think it's so hard for a goalie at the deadline because, team systems, familiarity with
Mhm.
teammates, goaltenders are so. I know the knock on them is that they're weird guys, right? But there's and some of that there is some truth to that. But they're so into their routines, their process, they're creatures of habit, and when you take them out of their habit and their where they're used to being, I think it can really disrupt how they play. And I think for goaltenders, they got to feel right. They just have to be comfortable with whatever the surrounding, whether it's teammates or team system play, or the way a coach approaches things on a daily basis. They just everything that they're used to. If it gets disrupted, it's very difficult for a guy to just change teams and take off without any bumps in the road. So I agree with you. I think it's hard to do. I think it's one of those things that needs to be done in the off season. Allow a guy to kind of come in, get used to the area, buy a house or rent, find a place to
Yeah.
get their kids settled, and then get the family comfortable, and then they can kind of do their thing. Just hard for a goalie to just step into a new environment and all of a sudden be Vezina caliber. I just find it, and you're right. Ryan Miller was one of those guys I thought for
Yeah.
sure would be able to do it. Didn't work out. I would be leery of doing something like that where you think they're going to have the impact that you think.
Let me get back to the Leafs with the goaltenders because they have Stolars, who they re-signed now for a couple of years. Had a really good year last year. He's been one of those guys that's been kind of just bitten by the injury bug throughout his career. He's a big guy. He's had some really good seasons. He was a good number 2 in Florida when they won the cup there behind Bobrovsky. He played very well for the Leafs last year, although again, injury issues. They always say, the best ability is availability. They have him, they have Wall, and then they have Hildeby, who they brought up, who's a big guy. I wasn't so sure he was an NHL goalie, but he played well when they brought him up. Would you consider, if you're the Leafs, moving one of those guys?
Um, because of and the reason why I hesitate is because of the injury issues with Stolar. Is
Yeah.
it's concerning, right? And if you lose that depth, and Walls had some issues as well.
Yep.
I just would. I don't know. I don't know if I would do that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't look to do that right now, just because of the fact that if you don't have goaltending, you don't have anything. And I think if they're all healthy, they're in a good spot. I like Stolarz. I mean, when I look at him, just presence in the net, he's big. He's been on several teams, a good veteran guy. And I think Wool's a talented young goalie who's going to have a good future. I would just hold tight on the goaltending situation. I wouldn't press it, just because if these guys were rock solid health wise, I'd feel more confident. But just because of what's happened, I'd be less inclined to move one of those guys.
All right, let me ask you a big picture with the Leafs. Last year, great year, won the division. Unfortunate in the playoffs. They lose to Florida. Florida won the cup. Maybe nobody was beating Florida. Nobody has the last 2 years. This year it's been a disaster. They've had injury issues. They've had underperformance. The Marner leaves. It just hasn't worked out. If you're sitting there, Bouche, right? Matthews has got 2 years left. Nylander's on a longer deal. Morgan Riley's got a lot of time left. He's somebody that I would try to consider maybe if they could move him somewhere. But big picture for the Leafs, I mean, you got the big star in Matthews. You still have some good goaltenders. You have some pieces. Nylander. What do you do?
I mean, I wouldn't look to move a guy like Matthews just yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's still, you got to give it one more season to see, what this team can do. I mean, don't forget, this team had 108 points last year.
That's
I mean,
right.
okay, Marner left, and I do think Marner is a big piece of it. There's no question. He's a
Yeah.
terrific hockey player, and I think that, and you could revisionist, history. You go back and say what was the issue. Maybe as good as Kyle Dubas has done in Pittsburgh, maybe the mistake that he made was keeping Nylander, and
Yeah.
if you look at it that way, but that's the
It's
past. What do
all
you?
water under the bridge
It
now, right? I
is.
mean, I agree with you. I think they went too heavy on offense. When they go all the way back to signing Tavares, who has been really good for them and is a really good player. If you would invest it in defense then
Yeah.
instead of offense with those guys there, maybe it would have been a different path. But again, this is all water under the bridge. Bush, you've been in this league for a long time. You've seen how it goes, right? You make a mistake in 2003, it could affect you still in 2013.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I just, when you got a guy like Matthews, who's a franchise player, I don't think
Yeah.
you look to move a guy like that. I think now you got to get more out of guys like Nylander. The environment has to get better there. I mean, like I
Yeah.
said, 108 points there last year. Something internally is not right.
Yeah.
And whether it's Craig Berube not being able to get to some of these guys, maybe his approach is a little too hard. I don't know, but
Mhm.
you need your stars to be better, right? And I
Yeah.
think, and honestly, I think the most criticism, in my opinion, I
Yeah.
feel like Nylander probably deserves the most heat because I feel, the injury, and he just, to me, I know he gets points, and I know but when I see a star player like that, I need more out of him on the daily basis. I need to see a commitment level that is noticeable, and I don't know that I see that on it. Why is that? Why are we not seeing that from him? Is it something they've got to figure out why they can't get more out of players like that so that they can all be successful, because this was a team that did have 108 points last year. They are missing Marner. I'm not saying they should be at 108 points again this year,
Yeah.
but they're still a very good team with a lot of good pieces. They got to get more out of these guys.
Interesting news today around the league. All this trade stuff, and there was this trade that the Blues were trying to trade Colton Parayko to the Sabres, and he had no move clause, and he decided to exercise that clause, and
Hmm.
he will not waive it. So, I want to ask you. I mean, because I don't think it. I think the players are really in a tough spot when this stuff happens. They negotiated no trade or no move, and then things don't go well, or they want to change course on a team, and then it becomes public. It's a really hard thing now for Colton Parayko because in St. Louis now, maybe he's the bad guy. He wouldn't
Yeah.
take the trade, but I don't think that's really fair to him. Maybe there has to be some kind of situation where you have to pay a player to waive his deal or something, just because that is a negotiated thing. I think it puts the players in a tough spot.
And why is this stuff getting out? That's the other thing. Like, why,
Yeah.
why does that information get out that we know that he's we are waiting to waive his no trade clause to a particular team. Now the Buffalo fan base is going to be like, every time this guy comes to Buffalo, they're going
Yeah.
to give it to him. It's like,
Yeah.
I just think that, why can't that stuff stay internal and quiet?
Yeah.
I'm not really sure, but you're right. These guys negotiated these things in their contracts. Both sides signed off on it. That stuff should be kept quiet, and it should be between player and the general manager and team that are trading them. And then once they sign off on it, then it should be made public, because it puts the players in a tough spot. But yeah, it's a good point. I mean, maybe you pay the guys and that'll change their tune on all of it. Money does talk at the end of the day. I know that I probably would sign. I'd
Yeah, I
sign
mean,
off
like
on
again,
anything if
it's
it paid me.
yeah. I mean, like it's a negotiated thing. So maybe that's like, hey, listen, we want to move you, and like but you have like the team knows there has to be some kind of negotiated financial settlement for the guy to do it because people have their lives. Colton Parayko's been a St. Louis Blue his whole life, and
Mhm.
that's what he knows. And like the Buffalo Sabres situation now, Bouch is way better. Right, it's way better. They're playing better. It's probably a good place to go right now. But for whatever reason, doesn't work for him. So it just, I don't know. I just
Because
think it's really tough
don't
for the
forget,
player.
EJ. I mean, these guys. Some guys have families. There's a lot more that goes into a
Yeah.
decision than just being on a good hockey team.
Yep.
Like, kids are involved in activities, and I don't know Parayko's personal life, but
Yep.
it could be a whole slew of things that
Yep.
maybe the spouse is not comfortable leaving just yet, and the kids are entrenched, and that matters to people. It really does.
Yeah.
These guys at the end of the day are human beings, and their personal lives matter to them. And then there's another part where maybe they're just like, I like it here in San, and I think this
Yeah.
team, I can be a help. I can be part of helping this team in the next
Mhm.
phase, as opposed to bailing on the team that I signed long term with. There's a lot that goes into it.
No question about it. Let me ask you about Mackenzie Weegar, another big move. He gets moved from Calgary to Utah. I think this is one of those situations, Bush, where everybody wins because Utah gets a defenseman who's a really good right shot defenseman that has plenty of term left on his contract, who's a good player and by all accounts a really good guy. And the the Mammoth doesn't have to give up a really high end prospect. They give up an older player in Oli Mata. They give up 3 second round picks, but they got tons of prospects. They didn't have to give up any first round picks. And for Calgary, 3 second round picks is significant for them in
Mhm.
the upcoming draft. They get Mata, who's someone that can play now. I think this is one of those deals that works for everybody.
Yeah, I don't know much about the prospect that's playing in college.
Yeah,
Seems like he's getting points. I think he's at Cornell. Like you said, Mata is a guy that can plug and play right now. He can help. He can fill that hole. And for Weegar, he's going to go what, third on the third pair there in Utah, maybe on the right side. I think it's a
yeah.
great pickup for the Mammoth. And don't forget, the Mammoth have had the best record in the West since January 1. They've
Wow.
gone toe to toe with like your Colorados. They just beat Minnesota. like this team, like they're sneakily kind of right
Yeah.
there. Vemelka leads the NHL in wins and goals. They've got something going there that I think a lot of people aren't paying attention to. I think it's a good move by Bill Armstrong. And for Calgary, listen, I mean, they're trying to stockpile, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what they're doing. They're building for the future, and if you hit on some of those picks, maybe you package some of those picks to get something else or move up. They're in that phase of their franchise, and so like you said, I think it helps both teams. Good spot for Weegar. I think this Mammoth team, don't sleep on these guys come the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the West is kind of wide open, and the problem for the Mammoth is they're in the Central, and so if they fall into that Central track, because they're a wild card, if
Mm-hmm.
they somehow fall into the Pacific track as a second wild card, or
Could be good.
however you want to look at that, all of a sudden the door is much wider open for them because they will
Yes.
not have to play two of the best teams in the league to get to the conference finals. So that'll be a big plus. Calgary building a new rink in a couple of years. So, the picks and everything is great for them. Good job by Craig Conroy, I think, continuing to kind of build there. But Utah, don't you think, Boucher, teams like that, like they've been knocking on the door, they have to get in the playoffs this year, right? I
Yeah.
mean, like they own new ownership. I mean, that management's been there for a little while. They have to kind of get in.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're at the point now, like it's a new franchise with an excited fan base. You've got them. Like now is the time to strike. And if you, I think they had was it 2 games ago they got booed off home ice when they lost to Chicago 4-0. I love that. I think that shows that the fans have
Yep.
an expectation for their
Yep.
team. They realize they're good. It's when they, if they're not, if they're cheering you after a game where you lose 4-0 against a team that's in last place and they don't care. These fans get it, and I think the
Yeah.
management understands that. So strike while it's hot, and like you said, you get in the right side of that bracket, and they could be looking at conference finals in the West very easily.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask you one more thing and let you go because I know you got a million things going on today. You got the Flyers and the Mammoth game coming up. But Tyler Myers goes from Vancouver. Another guy had to waive a clause, a no move, no trade clause, but he did it. He originally was born in Houston, so there's some connection there to Texas. I think he played junior hockey with Jamie Benn out in the Western League, so there's some familiarity there with the captain of the Dallas Stars. But what do you think of that team now that they've added Myers? They're in that spot with Minnie and with Colorado. They've been playing great hockey of late, even without Rantanen and Hintz, who have been out. What do you make of those three, in particular Dallas, with the addition of Myers?
I like Dallas. I still think they could make another move. I mean, with the Tyler Sagan money, right? He's been declared out. Has he been declared out? Am I right on that?
Yeah, he is out. That's
Yes,
correct. So they have a
right.
little more money to
So they have a
spend.
little bit
And
more money.
Vancouver ain't half the money on Myers. It's only
Right.
1.5 million.
I think they could make another move to bolster up front. I like the Myers pickup. I thought Ristolainen would have been a nice fit in Dallas as well with all those other Finns, and I thought Ristolainen played really well in the Olympics. He's played good for the Flyers. Health has been a concern for him, but I like the Myers pickup. For half the money that what's a 1.5 million they capped
Yeah,
it. A versatile player. He stays healthy. He's big. He's rangy. I think those types of guys in the playoffs can make it difficult for the opponent. That Central Division it's crazy. I mean, to think that
yeah,
one of those teams is going to be out
yeah,
after the first 2 weeks of the playoffs is just it's head scratching. But it's an arms race, and everybody knows they gotta one up each other. It'll be interesting to see if Bill Guerin has another trick up his sleeve before
yeah.
Friday's deadline. But yeah, that's a heck of a division to watch.
All right, last thing, because you mentioned him, Ristolainen. You see him all the time with the Flyers. You mentioned you like the way he's been playing. Are the Flyers going to move him? And like you said, all the things about him. I mean, I think that somebody would be very interested in him.
They're not going to give him away, and they shouldn't because the
Yeah,
Flyers are still
yeah,
trying to push for a playoff spot as well. He's got another year on his deal. He can PK. He's hard to play against. He can skate. He's physical. He can shoot it. There's a lot. I like him a lot, and I know he's had his detractors here in Philadelphia. And the only thing that I think you can detract from him is the fact that he's been injured, and that's the only knock that you can have on him. But when he's healthy, he's an effective player. teams should be calling for him, but would they be willing to pay the price that the Flyers are looking for? That's the question. If I'm trying to get my team to another level, and you need that depth defenseman, someone hard to play against, I would do it. But I'm not running a team either. So, but it'll be interesting to see. But I don't think the Flyers are interested in just giving them away for nothing.
Yeah.
It's going to have to be a significant return.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And you know what? Players get, I always say, and this is why scouts are so important. Players get better and get worse all the time throughout their career. They have peaks, they have valleys. You probably lived it as a player yourself. Right now, based on what you're telling me and what others have told me, Ristolainen is playing well. And
Very
like
well.
he was a highly thought of guy when he was drafted and went to Buffalo. They had all kinds of problems in Buffalo. He's kind of found his way later. Maybe he's a later bloomer, but he could be a helpful player for somebody. So we'll see if he gets moved. Boucher, I'll let you get ready for the Mammoth and Flyers tonight. Thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Keep up the great work on TNT, and I'll hopefully see you at the rink soon.
All right, EJ. Great to talk to you. See ya.
All right, Brian Boucher, one of the top analysts in all of the game, but you see him certainly on TNT, and he also works with the Flyers. That is the Toronto Sports Rush for this afternoon. Thanks everybody for watching. EJ Hradek, remember, subscribe, like Toronto Sports Rush right here on the Bet Rivers Network.